Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Thursday, August 25th, 2022. Welcome to day 583. A federal magistrate judge ordered the Justice Department to release a redacted version of the affidavit used to justify the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago. Judge Bruce Reinhardt accepted the DOJ's redactions to keep secret the identities of witnesses, law enforcement agents, people who haven't been charged, grand jury information, and details about the, quote, investigation's strategy, direction, scope, sources, and methods, end quote. Reinhardt ordered the government to release the redacted version by noon on Friday. Trump's lawyers, meanwhile, had concerns about the 24 boxes of presidential records that Trump took to Mar-a-Lago and agreed that the documents should be returned, according to National Archive officials. In a May 2021 email to Trump's lawyers, the National Archive's chief counsel wrote, quote, "It is also our understanding that roughly 24 boxes of original presidential records were kept in the residence of the White House over the course of President Trump's last year in office and have not been transferred to NARA, despite a determination by Pat Cipollone in the final days of the administration that they needed to be," end quote. Trump eventually returned 15 boxes of documents to the archives in early 2022 after Gary Stern, the archive's chief counsel, told Trump officials that he would have to notify Congress. After realizing there were hundreds of pages of classified material in the returned boxes, National Archives officials referred the matter to the DOJ. Meanwhile, the Justice Department released the unredacted memo justifying former Attorney General William Barr's decision not to prosecute Trump for obstructing Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. The 9-page memo advised Barr that Mueller's report, quote, identifies no actions that, in our judgment, constituted obstructive acts done with a nexus to a pending proceeding with the corrupt intent necessary to warrant prosecution under obstruction of justice statutes, end quote. The Mueller report, however, laid out 10 possible instances of obstruction of justice, including Trump directing his White House counsel to fire Mueller, pressuring then Attorney General Jeff Sessions to narrow Mueller's investigation, and Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey. The D.C. Circuit Court ordered the release of the full memo, affirming 2 federal court decisions which found that Barr did not rely on the memo and had already made up his mind not to charge Trump before he commissioned the memo. A heavily redacted version of the memo was previously released in 2021. Moving on, the Trump administration pressured the FDA to accelerate the authorization of vaccines and unproven treatments for COVID-19 before Election Day. This according to a report released by the House Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis. Senior Trump administration officials also pressed the health agency to reauthorize the use of hydroxychloroquine after the FDA revoked the emergency clearance of the drug because data showed that it was ineffective against COVID-19 and could cause potentially dangerous heart complications. The report concluded that the Trump administration's crusade against the FDA, quote, resulted in damaging consequences for the coronavirus response, end quote. Meanwhile, former Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke lied to investigators several times about whether he wrongly blocked 2 native tribes from opening a casino in Connecticut in 2017. Investigators found that Zinke and his chief of staff made statements to the Inspector General's office, quote, with the overall intent to mislead them, end quote. Zinke is currently favored to win a House seat in Montana this fall. Meanwhile, in Idaho, a federal judge blocked part of that state's abortion ban, which criminalizes performing an abortion on a person to protect their health. Earlier this month, the Justice Department sued Ohio, arguing that the law would prevent emergency room doctors from performing abortions necessary to protect the health of a pregnant patient. The preliminary injunction left intact most of the bill's other provisions, which constitute a near-total ban on the procedure in Idaho. And finally, Texans who perform abortions now face up to life in prison after the state's trigger law went into effect. The law criminalizes performing an abortion from the moment of fertilization unless the patient is facing a, quote, life-threatening physical condition aggravated by, caused by, or arising from a pregnancy, end quote. The statute also directs the Attorney General to seek a civil penalty of no less than $100,000 plus attorney fees. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Anditas.